Yes, here we are again. My name is Lisette Schruitenmaker. I'm Dutch. I'm in Amsterdam, and I was invited by my lifelong friend Lucy McCarraher, who is in Norfolk in the UK, to do this podcast because I turned 70 on the 22nd of September a year ago. And Lucy is lagging behind a little bit. She's not yet 71. So we're continuing this podcast for another few weeks until Lucy also turns the beautiful age of 71. So, what have you been up to, Lucy?
Indeed. So I have been celebrating another milestone that fell within the year of being 70, which was my 30th wedding anniversary. And that's to my second husband. I had 20 years with my first husband. So I've actually been married overall in my whole life for 50 years, which I think is pretty good going, frankly. I
The
was,
strange thing is that I think of your current husband as kind of the newcomer, but
yes.
it's 30 years, really.
Yes, exactly. So do I. I think of him, as sort of like, my first husband was the sort of, the long-term kind of,
Yeah.
just happened to end. And then, yes, exactly. Rich has always been my new husband, but now I've spent 50% longer with him than I did with Rob. And I noticed also this week, I noticed Rob was posting on social media saying that he was celebrating his 25th wedding anniversary to
Oh,
his second wife. So, we're both okay. And that's good too.
good. Good. So was that a moment in which you kind of reinvented yourself?
When I got married again, yeah, absolutely it was. Yes. I mean, I was still just 40 when I got married. So that was the September the 30th, 1995. And is that right? Or was it 1990? Anyway, never mind. And yes, and I reinvented.
95, yes. Must
Yeah.
have been 95. That's 30
Yeah.
years ago. Yes.
So I reinvented myself as a newly married woman at that point, and but also we started a new family at for me quite an advanced age, and Richard's 11 years younger than me, and he didn't have any
Wow.
children.
So was he just 29?
Yes, he was. Yes, so really, when look,
Wow. So he's like Macron. He's like, the president of France who has
indeed, yes,
married a woman quite a bit older than
yes,
himself.
yes,
How
indeed.
interesting that you nabbed such a young guy.
Yes, yes, it was a funny thing. I mean, I don't know. I think that's one of the other my other kind of counterclockwise kind of events in life, the things that take you back to a younger period. Because not, I mean, I married again, but also when I started sort of kind of going out with Richard, he was doing things that younger people that I mean, I was 39, he was then, I don't know, 28 or whatever. And, he was going to nightclubs. I had not that I'd ever really been to nightclubs, because I don't think nightclubs,
Because you were already
exactly.
married and you
Yes,
had
exactly,
children. You
exactly. Yeah.
skipped that phase. So you life gave it back to you at a later stage.
Exactly. I had a whole other. So when Rob and I split up, our children, the boys used to spend a week with him and a week with me. So I had, every other week where I was no longer a mum. I was, somebody with a young boyfriend, and we used to go, clubbing and stuff. I can't honestly pretend that it was my absolute favorite occupation, but we that's what we did.
Not liking music, that must have been hard. But when you're in love, you do these things, right?
Right. I mean, in a sense, I hadn't really clocked that I didn't like music, or that I was different to other people, and other people did like music in a different way to me at that point. But it wasn't the only thing we did, obviously. But, I was very much around his younger friends as well. So it was kind of rejuvenating. Nobody kind of, I don't think nobody appeared to treat me as a strange older woman. So yeah, it was a counterclockwise, and it was a phoenix moment. And then when we were married and we were going to have
What do you
children.
mean a phoenix
Oh,
moment?
so my contention is that women are like phoenixes, and that they reinvent themselves sort of every decade, but not, it doesn't actually fall into defined decades necessarily. But I feel that women's lives are lived in cycles much more than men's lives. Men sort of have more of a straight kind of, career paths, the way their lives go. And when they get older, also, they are kind of looked at as silver foxes and, people who
Grumpy old men.
but they're kind of in their 50s and 60s, they're reaching the peak of their careers. And for a lot of women, if you don't fight that, you're kind of devolving down into invisibility as a 50.
So when we did our podcast and did the 5 years from 60 to 65 and then 65 to 70, it turned out that you and I had been like fabulously productive.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I'm countering this.
Yes, no, it's completely I think we've fought against this kind of
I
invisibility.
did not fight, but
No, well, it happened, whatever. No,
it happened, and so I'm not sure. I see. Yeah, I think it depends on the kind of life you've led.
that's true. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
But
think
anyway, you're explaining about the phoenix and kind of contraposing men and women's lives, more
yes, I think
linear,
in a
more
way,
cyclical.
women often have to reinvent themselves. I mean, because I think we go through more cyclical family relationships. I mean, and possibly that's why it's not true of you because you didn't kind of, devote yourself to motherhood for a time. And
No.
I did it for you. I did two families, you did none. So I've taken I think I've,
Childless living, just pointing to it. Gelukkig zonder kinderen. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely. You are the guru of childless living, completely, while I am the opposite, having done child full living twice over.
Yes.
So yes, and I do think that I do feel in a way that's why I am what you might think of as a late developer, that I am finally sort of able to sort of step out and want to go out, found companies, do things now that I didn't think of it as being held back by children at the time. That wasn't how I thought of it, but there was limited time. I didn't have the freedom and I've always not had a job specifically because of family reasons and wanting to be there for children. And so yes.
So I would recommend that, of course, when you have children, then with modern couples, with nowadays couples, a little bit less, but the women often turn in whilst the men kind of continue, but that's less and less
Yes,
true in
it
many
is.
cases.
Yeah.
But 1 in 5 women has no children. So I
No.
would recommend that you also consider women who don't go through those cycles of childbirth and primary school and middle school and then empty nest syndrome and all of those things because it's 1 in 5 of us. Just, I always
Yeah.
say, walk in the street and just remember 1 in 5 people has no children. It's not an exception. It's a lot.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, probably not represented enough. But I wonder if there's a cyclical thing there anyway, just because we're women and that, we change direction, change kind of work we do, change passions, change purpose, and perhaps, and I know I'm being very general here, perhaps more than men do. Well, men might tend to do it more at the end of a career where they think, I'm kind of due for retirement or I'm selling a company or I'm, sort of coming to the end of a particular sort of phase, maybe in my 50s or 60s. Now I need to reinvent myself and do something different and
I
more.
see many young men. I mean, I'm here, and of course, this is also kind of a little bubble, but young people want to go to work for companies with a purpose. They don't want to work in companies that have a purpose of only money. And also many, and younger, once they have entered kind of the rat race, kind of go and wonder, is this all there is? Can't I do more with my talents? And there's a Dutch journalist called Rutger Bregman who wrote a book about moral ambition. And he's actually, canvassing for all these talented people not to be tax advisors or lawyers for companies so they can continue to pollute, but go the other route and have a meaningful life. And I think that comes earlier and earlier. And kind of the midlife crisis, of course, that we used to have, that was around 40, when men were kind of, oh, what have I done? I'm now tied down with a wife and children in this job, and I have to continue working because I'm the provider. That's for some, of course, for many, that is still true, but there's also a whole other stream.
Yes, no, no, I completely agree, and I think it's wonderful that it's changing, and young people are going to be completely different. I suppose I'm writing a book called The Phoenix Theory, which is sort of
Aha.
about this, which is kind of aimed at women who are now 40 plus. So it's about kind of daring to reinvent and daring to reimagine your life later in life. But I completely agree that younger people are not kind of following these same rather set paths. And I have to say that both my sons I mean, they do in terms of, sharing. I mean, they both have partners with full-time work, and I mean, both couples share the domestic load, the
Yeah.
childcare load, everything completely. In fact, one of my sons says, I try to do more than 50% always, just so I don't fall below the 50%.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Yeah. So that's a really different model. And it's interesting to see how it was like in our time and how it is now. It will
yeah,
be interesting to study that.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
I think it is different, but
So you reinvented yourself
I've
when you got
reinvented.
divorced
I did,
and then
yeah,
remarried.
yeah, and
And
then
you were around 40. I reinvented myself around 42.
you changed
Yeah.
direction completely, didn't you? I mean,
I changed direction completely. Yeah. And I say, my consciousness opened and I could not continue to be like his master's voice for big corporations that did not want to look at the negative effects. I mean, there's many positive effects of these companies, but there's also negative effects. And they were kind of, don't wake us up. Don't wake us
yeah,
up just yet.
yeah,
And so I
absolutely.
had to sell my company and I had to find new friends. But I've continued. I mean, I've done various things, but I've continued in that line ever since then. And I found, circles and circles of aware and conscious and driven and interesting people.
Yes, but I think there's a certain kind of, I mean, I know it's not a sort of massive reinventions, but every time you take on a new project or, join a new board, it's a sort of little, kind of reimagining of what you can be doing and what your, a new kind of purpose that
Yeah, it's not
fires
really
you
a
up.
purpose. I feel, to me, well, I have several with my books. I think my books are all about alleviating loneliness, thinking like
Oh,
in
that's
childless living, we
interesting.
think we're the only one, we're the only one in our family, maybe, we're the only one in our club, group of friends, maybe. And so we need to find new friends when my our old friends disappear into babyland. And also with the eldest daughter, that's sometimes a bit of a lonely position in the family. And so once you see that all of us, many of us at least fall into that pattern, then you're not alone anymore. So that's one of them. But mostly mine is about kind of raising consciousness to us being part of nature and needing to care for it and because it cares for us and then how can we care back and I've spent years kind of raising awareness and now I'm more into the practical of investing so then you have to orient yourself in a new world and learn a lot.
Exactly. And I categorize those as sort of, I mean, you've got your overarching mission and purpose, which stays the same. And I think, for most people, we talked about that last week about, looking at your life and trying to get a pattern that fits into this one purpose that perhaps we're all born with. But I think every time I mean, for instance, when you went to Findhorn, that was a really big learning curve and different kind of place for you to be. And I classify that as a sort of new phase and a sort of reinvention of yourself as a chair, as a
Yeah, that chair was in the final 4 years. I came there first in 98 and kind of found in that spiritual community in Eco Village up north in Scotland, kind of the manifestation of my inner world. I thought, they're doing everything I've always felt that people could be kind and mindful and see nature and the earth as a living place with lots of beings living in other frequencies. It was, and it is still fantastic to be there.
Amazing. Yes. And now you've kind of, that's almost that path that you've been on has culminated in you being at a Vatican conference with the Pope in Rome, invited as one of, not very many business people, I put it in inverting commas, to talk about the environment. So give us the update. What happened? How was it?
Well, there's this man, he is a social alchemist, a weaver, a master weaver of people called Marcello Palazzi. I first met him actually when I had my awakening and I became a member of Social Venture Network, and he was there too. So, over the past 30 years, we've kind of run into one another, and he's started a group called For Good Leaders, getting companies and business leaders together and say, we are many. And my belief is that once a movement sees itself, it kind of grows in strength and it also becomes more attractive. Then people say, oh, yeah, that person over there is doing something good and different from mainstream, and that person over there. But once we're a movement, something new begins. And he's really, really good at that. And he has connections everywhere. So he also has connections with the Vatican. And this was actually the commemoration of 10 years ago. Pope Francis wrote an encyclical, which I have now understood because I'm not Catholic at all, is a direction for 1.4 billion Catholics all over the globe, um, to to care for nature as nature cares for us. And it's called Laudato Si, which are the first words of Francis from Assisi. It's praise be unto thou, they, thee, them, my Lord. And so Pope Leo, in his first, month of being in office, chose to celebrate this 10 years and invite people who are in churches of all denominations, and there were many also indigenous people, and there were 45 business leaders, of which, tralala, I was one. And so it's been it's been a great honor to be there, and to hear from this Pope's mouth. I think it it is so wonderful when a successor praises their predecessor and say their work was important, and it gives direction and a framework to believers all over the globe. And actually, Arnold Schwarzenegger was there too, former
Wow.
governor of California, and who said, there's 400,000 priests, there's 600,000 nuns, and this is a force of nature when they start to do things. And the Pope spoke, and oh yeah, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was funny. He said, we're going to terminate climate change. So this was, of course, a very political, thing to say, and
Yeah.
also very funny because of his career. And then he said, there is my action hero. And he pointed to the Pope. And then the Pope said, before I read the written, remarks that I have here, I want to say there are many action heroes in this room. In fact, this room is full of action heroes.
How
It was
lovely.
very beautiful.
Oh,
It was
wonderful.
very beautiful. And also when he did his blessing, it's like, even though, but he is so profoundly spiritual, I would say, that it really came through. And the next day, the Pope was there only for an hour, as was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then the next day, I went to a workshop where people spoke about what they do in their parish, in their church, with this Laudato Si instruction, and where they had their successes and where they had their challenges. And it was a wonderful sharing of how people, ground roots are doing things, from, planting trees to restoring forests to restoring the social fabric in their community, because it all starts with, wherever your heart goes out to.
Yes, how absolutely wonderful. What a wonderful event to have attended. Did you get to contribute at all, ask a question? Make
Well, not in the plenary was very much there was the stage and here were we. And then in the workshop, we did little conversations with two and three of us, and there my friend and I, Sabine and I, spoke with a woman from Ireland and had a lovely conversation, and then we all kind of contributed to, the general conversation. But also we had a tour of the papal gardens, which are
Mm.
magnificent and beautiful, and it was lovely. And actually, on our final day in Rome was also the day of the general strike.
Oh,
It was gridlock, and we were all the time wondering, should we get a taxi here or there or there? It was very difficult, and nobody knew exactly what was happening. And so we walked to the Colosseum, my friend Sabine and I, and then we walked back. Shall we go back to the hotel? Shall we go there? Well, it was all, and then we ran into this man who actually had his office next door to me. I lived in the city center on Herengracht for 25 years.
oh,
He had his office next door to me. We never spoke. We never spoke, and I met him there.
how
And
bizarre.
he's a devout Catholic. And we ran into him, and he said, I'm on my way to the sacred door and to the grave, to the tomb of Pope Francis. So we just had time and we joined him. And this grave of Pope Francis has just been installed, and it is one of utter simplicity. There's just a stone, there's one rose, and then there is a little cross which is lit in a way that it really, brings out to light. So, with the simplicity that he advocated,
Very, very
his,
appropriate. And
yeah.
yeah, how lovely. What
Yes, and it really also, made the circle round from,
Well, you've had the most amazing time. Did you manage to get out of Rome okay? You managed to
yes,
catch a
yes, it
train,
was.
things like that?
Fortunately, we had a race car driver for a taxi. So every time he saw on his app that there was a gridlock, he turned around and took another
Wow.
road, and
Wow.
the flight was delayed. So all worked out.
Oh,
All
good.
worked
Good.
out.
That's fantastic. And
Yes.
now you're home for a bit, but
I'm hopeful. Yeah. Yeah, we leave for Berlin on Wednesday
you're very, very
because
traveling at the moment.
I'm going to a conference on steward ownership, which I feel if we don't rethink ownership of companies, most companies kind of get by and don't pay huge dividends to founders or family, but some do, and I think that is inordinate. And so there's this whole movement of steward ownership where the economic rights and voting rights are separated. A company basically runs itself, and there's a cap on what the founders and the compensation of founders and investors, and then the shares come into a non-for-profit that then holds, the for-profit company. And I love that way of rethinking ownership. I think it is part of yeah, the kind of, we're always building a new economy, but this is definitely for me part of the new economy that we are imagining.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds wonderful. Absolutely fantastic.
Yes,
Wow.
in my 71st, no, my 72nd year on this earth.
Yes, yes.
Good. So, yay.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's brilliant. Well, I've got some exciting things happening in my business arena, which
Yeah.
I can't really talk about yet, but I can tell you a little story of how it started, which is sort of a bit like it was. I was reminded by you saying you met someone, who from Amsterdam in Rome, who you knew but didn't know, and the extraordinary kind of
Yeah.
so I think it was June now, I was asked to go and give a talk at one of our authors' events. He gives not quite exclusive events. He is a consultant coach to other business owners, and they're all kind of quite high powered, and they're usually founders of businesses of all sorts. So it was in a part of the world in fact in the New Forest, and it was quite near my younger son lives. So I thought, oh, great, I'll go
The
and
New
spend.
Forest. Is that where Robin Hood was?
No, he was in Sherwood Forest.
Oh, that was in Sherwood Forest. Okay, it was a forest. That's what I remember.
New Forest is
The
sort of,
New Forest, has it been newly,
I don't
like
know
a
how
new
new.
husband? Is it older than you think?
I think it probably is quite old. Also, what's lovely about it is I don't know if you've ever heard of New Forest ponies, but they are a kind of
Oh,
a breed of horse, and they're just kind of out there in the forest, and
oh,
they walk across the road, and they have complete right of way, and they're very sort of beautiful. And so you drive along this road, and there's all these horses kind of
ah,
sort of
wonderful. And they
feeding
take care
both.
of themselves. They kind of eat
I
what
honestly
they find and drink from the stream. Oh, that sounds so romantic.
I don't honestly I don't know. I'm sure they must be cared for.
Yeah.
But there must be some oversight of them, but I don't know how it works, but it's very lovely to drive through. But anyway, I thought that I would take up this offer, this speaking offer, because it was near my son, and I'd go and stay with him the night before, and that would be a nice kind of combination. As it turned out, my son was away that night, so I ended up I
Yes.
ended up being invited to, they had a pre-event dinner, and sort of put me up in a hotel and all this sort of thing, which was very nice. But so I went to the dinner, and it was full of sort of younger men than me, and there were like maybe two other women there, and there were maybe 40 or 50 men, which kind of makes me feel stupidly a bit intimidated. And I felt,
Hmm.
they were all, not that anybody makes me feel like that. That's just
Yeah.
how I can feel. So, and I'm not terribly good at big, kind of interactions. I like
We know that by now.
I know. So anyway, I went to this dinner, and it was fine, and people were very nice. And I met a man who said, "Oh, I told him about Rethink Press and publishing for entrepreneurs." And he said, "Oh yes, no, I've got a company that has lots of entrepreneurs, and I think this would be very useful to us, and I'll be in touch." And I work with an author called Vern Harnish, who is actually very well known in the US and the kind of entrepreneur world, very, very genuinely very successful, best-selling book called Scale Up. And he was there the next day, and he was giving the keynote talk. So I kind of introduced myself to him, which again takes me a bit of an effort. I don't like doing, walking up to people and that I don't know. And anyway, he was very nice. But what had happened was that in the run up to giving this talk, I had said to the man who was organizing it, "Do you want me to send you slides through? Do you want a slide deck? How are we doing this?" And he said, "No, I think I'm going to have it more like a series of TED Talks, and nobody needs slides. TED Talks don't really have slides, so just
Yeah.
talk, and that's fine." So I thought, okay, normally I quite rely on my slides as, sort of pointers to what
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember what I'm saying, but I thought, okay, I'll do it this way. That's fine. We started the next day. Vern gave his keynote speech. He had the most amazing slide deck. It was just, it was full of video. There was,
Unfair.
and I was thinking, oh my God, this is, and everybody was very thrilled. And then we went through the day. My talk was mid-afternoon, and every single every man, there were no other women speakers. Every man had a fabulous slide deck talking about their business. And I was getting, normally I don't get nervous about public speaking. It's the one thing that, I might get nervous about going to a dinner, but not about standing on a platform. But this time I was literally beginning to feel quite sick that, I was thinking, should I run and get my computer out of the car and, put a slide deck together?
Oh, oh my.
I was thinking, no, I'm just going to have to do this. And, and I'm so much the odd one out in terms of all these sort of, I guess they were, between 30s and 50s, successful guys standing up and talking about their business. So finally it got to my slot, and I was really, really panicking. And then suddenly I stood up and to go to the stage, and it just melted away. And I thought, no, it's fine. I'll just do this. And
So what is that? What is that? It's so interesting because you had a phoenix moment right there.
Yeah, yes, almost. Yes, exactly. And I don't know what it was. It was partly because the guy who was before me was also very nervous, and I'd kind of helped him set up his slides in the break, and he was very sweet and nice, and he gave a nice talk, and his slides were fine. But it's sort of, I don't know, maybe it's always kind of when you help other people, you stop worrying about yourself so much, don't you?
Eldest daughters, we're brought up to help other people, not ask for help, but help other people. It's very reassuring to be in that role.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's
To
true.
help your little brother set
Yeah,
up his slide deck.
yes, exactly.
Yay, yay, yay.
So anyway, I got up, I spoke, I had no slides. It just felt fine. Everybody was, the audience was quite helpful. And Vern, who I thought, would probably have left by now, having done his keynote, was standing at the back. And I managed to kind of include him. And I talk about book magic, how authors have these moments of magic that happen from their books. And I said, I'm sure Vern has had many, many magic moments. And he laughed and, sort of nodded and it went well. And I was very I was very relieved. And then I gave a little workshop for people who wanted to do more. And then I drove away thinking, oh, I got away with that, I think. And
My dear, you're such a hero. You can't stay at your son's, so you go to the dinner, which I know you don't particularly like. You're intimidated by these men, and yet you do it. Then they all have slides, and you sit there and go like, "Wow, what is?" And so you've overcome all that.
I know, but then the next day I get an email from the guy who had given who had given the whose event it was, and he said, I just had dinner with Vern Harnish last night, and we both thought that your talk was outstanding, and he would
I knew
like
it.
to
I knew it.
and he would like to put you in touch with the guys who run Forbes books in America. And he tagged in.
Now there's a name. Now
And
there's a name.
exactly. And he included all these other people. I then immediately got another email from the head of Forbes Books who said, I would like to talk to you. I'd really like to talk to you about book magic and Rethink Press. And when can we get on a Zoom call? And
Well, when you were 70, right?
oh, and I was,
With
yes,
your
yes.
wisdom and experience and your wonderful, you know,
So
energy.
I included my a couple of my well, Joe, my business partner in Rethink Press and Book Magic, and Daniel, who runs Dent, who is also obviously part of both of them, and said, look, this is what's happened, shall we get on, shall we tee up a call with them? We had a call with them the next day, and all I can say is that this is big and interesting
You're
things.
still talking.
We're still talking. Deals are being done. It's very, very exciting. But it took me kind of going through a particular kind of hell but it kind of worked out in the end. So really, I don't know what the lesson from that is. Don't worry, things will be okay. Do what you.
Yeah, and also, I mean, your perseverance and you're just, I just see this little girl going to school, having no idea what it is, but just put one foot in front of the other and do it anyway. And that's what I see you do. I mean, you are a pioneer, really. I mean, in this whole publishing business, giving voice to those who don't have a voice, which is something that motivates you from the inside, right? And then you just do it. And then with your, I'm going to say terrible things to you that you don't like, but I'm asking you to take it in. No, with your grace and your wit and your vast overview, that we've built in our 70 years, or maybe in our fine last 30 years. That
Well,
wow, I'm not at all surprised that they thought your talk was outstanding
oh well.
because your heart is in this.
Well, I know what I have to say. Thank you. It's kind of you to notice.
Now, is that your new baseball bat
That's
that you
my
can just, football out to outer field there.
That's my
Yeah.
that's my way of
You know,
taking.
I was invited to the 50th wedding anniversary of a friend I have not seen for years. I have not seen this couple for years. I was their bridesmaid. It was a bit of a joke. We were in the same student housing together. And when she got married at 21, I was like, why are you getting married at 21? But you did the same thing. So I said, I've always wanted to be a bridesmaid once in my life. So could I please? Yes. So I have a picture of us in Laura Ashley dresses, and it looks like we're in like with Mr. Darcy, we're like in a Jane Austen novel. It all looks so old-fashioned. But then the daughter sent me an email and said, we're gathering all the people who were at the official wedding photo with her. And I'm like, why would you do that? You've had a whole life. Why would you go back to those people? But I thought, can't really say no. So, yeah, having just arrived home the previous day, I went to The Hague. It was like storm, and this was at the seaside. I was like, when I came home, I still had sand, on my skin because it was blowing a gale. But I was one of the last ones to leave, where I thought, I'll go in for an hour and then leave. Because by now, and I don't know if you recognize this, but I've learned I was painfully shy as a child. I was so shy, but I have learned over time, I've learned some tricks, and that is ask the other person, what is their life about, and then pick up on something. It's like an interview.
Yeah.
You have interview techniques. And then at some point they'll ask you, and then you have a
Or not
conversation.
sometimes, or not
Or not sometimes. Some people like to go on and on about themselves. And, I
still.
would even at some point, I'm now courageous and old also enough. I use my kind of eldership and say, yeah, I had a man explain something to me at lunch. We were sitting in Castel Gandolfo, which is a lovely, lovely little town on a hill where the papal gardens and the papal summer residence is. And there's a lake there. It was absolutely beautiful. The food was Italian and totally delicious. And a man sat across from me and started to talk at length about something. And then at some point I said, oh, you mean, yes, I'm involved with it. And then he said, oh, you've caught me mansplaining. And I'm like, wow,
Well, that's nice. Nice that he admitted it.
nice that he admitted it, but also an ability on my part
Yeah.
to say things in a way that he could draw the conclusion and was not accused by
Yes,
me.
yes, that is a very good thing to do and not to
So I
put
think
you on the
I've
spot.
over the years acquired conversation abilities,
Yes.
and I try to deepen a conversation. So to pick up things that people say like in between or little remarks and go like, so what was that about? That must have been not an easy time in your life, or that must have been amazing that you so and then the conversation comes out of the tram rails. Then it becomes more engaging, and
Yeah.
yeah, I enjoy being able to do that now. That's how I think of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good place to end for this week.
Yes.
Say yes. So you've had an amazing time with the Pope and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
what
Far
kind
away
of
on a stage, but mainly with the people that
in the
Marcello
room, in the
gathered, and very interesting people from all
room?
over the globe who do amazing things in
What
their
an
work.
achievement for your 71st, beginning of your 72nd year. That's fantastic. And yeah, and I've had my 30th wedding anniversary and got some interesting things happening business-wise. So yeah, not bad. Not a bad
Life
week,
ain't
eh?
over yet. Okay, see you next week, darling.
See you next week. Bye, everyone.